Anyway, yeah, really, really good kind of chatting with you guys to kick this off. Just a heads up, I'm recording this, and I already started recording it because I was telling Kelly and Tucker I'm notorious for forgetting to do that until after it already starts, and then you miss the beginning. So really, yeah, we're here today to talk about some of our favorite highlights or takeaways from Adobe Summit, which again this year was virtual, which is nice in some ways because you can kind of take it at your own pace. Definitely missed the face-to-face interaction and the nice get together that Michael Coleman usually puts on for all of us Wisconsin folks. But nonetheless, hopefully we'll have some good takeaways here to talk about today. But before we jump in, kind of the normal housekeeping stuff. I think most people on the call have been either to the Milwaukee mug before or another mug. But for those of you who haven't, or regardless, just a reminder, this is really just meant to be a safe space for everyone. Any question is welcome. This is a spot where we're all trying to come here and learn from each other. After all, I think one of the things that's really nice about Marketo is the community and the fact that we're all stronger when we can kind of help each other out and work together. So with that, and I don't think anybody here is going to be doing any kind of self-promoting or selling of any kind. But that's certainly, this is not the place for that. So that said, this slide, honestly, I always kind of debate if we should leave it in or not. But because, if you're here today, you probably found our mug page on the new Bevy tool that Marketo has been using. However, one of the, I guess, silver linings of everything being virtual now is you can join mugs anywhere around the world, and there is absolutely no shortage of content out there, and lots of really interesting ideas, really good people that are just like brain dumping. So if it's something easy to jump on a lunch break or something like that, and see what people are talking about. So not only look for the Milwaukee mug, the Wisconsin mug, but there's mugs all over the place that are doing some really cool stuff. Another kind of reminder or maybe just public service announcement. Tucker and I were actually talking about this before most people jumped on. If you are looking to get Marketo certified, or maybe you let your certification lapse like I did and like Tucker is coming up on, this is just kind of a reminder. So Marketo has changed the exam. I don't know how recently, honestly. It's definitely changed since I took it. And so they've come out with some newer support materials to help you kind of prep. I also think that the mugs are a really good place to kind of reach out for, if you have questions or want to bounce, specific questions or ideas past people. These people who come to these mugs are usually very open to that. I mentioned before, Michael Tucker has done a really good job consolidating and kind of collecting content on the virtual Marketo user group YouTube page. There's tons of stuff over there, or YouTube channel, I should say. And so, this is actually kind of a good reminder to me that I should get my butt in gear and get recertified. So there you go. And with that, I did mention, I think everybody kind of saw Michael Coleman join today, which happy you did, Michael. In talking with you ahead of this, it sounded like maybe you had a couple things you wanted to share with the group. So with that, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and give us your updates.
You bet. Thanks, Jay. And first off, thanks everybody for joining. This is fun for me as I see the Wisconsin user group grow. It's interesting. I think we grew it literally up to over 60 people here pre-COVID, and had some good events in Milwaukee. So we look forward to continuing that. I think we're just getting to the point where we're getting permission to start traveling and having face-to-face meetings again. So maybe even this summer that can happen yet. So that would be really, really cool. So yeah, glad Michael Tucker's on board here and going to be sharing some things about the summit, right? I mean, that was awesome. Just a tremendous amount of content. The only thing that kind of sucked about it was it wasn't in Vegas. And so maybe we'll get to do that next year. And I think we're all anxious for that. But all in all, there's just a lot of new and really good things happening. Not only, with Marketo, some of the new enhancements that you're going to be seeing from Summit and everything else is really focused on a couple of things. One, yes, okay, so we've been waiting for Sky for a long time, right? And we don't have the honor of having Jason with us because he's like the meme king when it comes to Sky kinds of scenarios. But we've been waiting for it for a long time, right? And just due to the different evolutions of Marketo with going public and then being acquired by Vista and then being acquired by Adobe, it got slowed down a bit. But we are seeing a lot of the new UI starting to come into play. A lot of you guys, if you've been, if you're on Marketo now, you'll start to see those being implemented as we speak. So that's really cool. Other things are really big is integrations going back into the Adobe stack itself. So that is really powerful when you start to share the integrations with like AEM and sharing content back and forth, or being able to use Adobe Analytics and push segments from Analytics into Marketo and on down the line. So there's a lot of good content at Summit that's in there as well. Yeah, and that's highlights for me. And I guess if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. But one of the things that as the Adobe guy, I always like to do is talk a little bit of swag, right? So, and since we've got a grand total of 8 people on this call, if you guys send me your email address, you'll be getting some Adobe swag in the mail. And but the only way you'll get it is if you send me an email. So email me at Coleman, KUHLMAN @adobe.com. And next time I want to see everybody wearing their swag. So cool stuff.
You don't have any old school purple Marketo swag you could share, do you?
Oh man, I tell you what, we have to go to eBay for finding some of that probably.
It'll be worth something.
Yeah, hold on to that. Thanks, Michael. And I'll put your email address in the follow-up after this call today. And that's nice. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the update.
You're welcome. And if anybody has any questions, I can take them now. If not, I am going to have to jump onto my next meeting. But any thoughts or questions? Okay. Well, keep going. Look forward to seeing you guys face to face sometime soon. If you have questions, don't hesitate to give me a ring. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
Sounds good. Thank you,
Michael.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's move ahead. Before we kind of jump into the content, just kind of high level, like what are we trying to do today? What's the goal? As I mentioned, or as it was mentioned on the mug page for this session, this is really just kind of a highlight reel of our favorite Summit sessions. Specifically geared toward those Marketo sessions. There's a lot to go through for any one person. And so this is probably the second or third year that we've done this kind of takeaway session, which I always kind of appreciate because it helps me narrow it down too, about, sessions that I might want to go back and take a closer look at. Yeah, it's a lot to go through. I think, as far as the Marketo focused sessions, there's probably 25, 30, or maybe even more than that. Michael would probably know pretty well, but today I think we're going to cover probably about 10 of those specifically. So I think you're going to get a pretty good sample of some of the content that was covered. And, maybe you've already gone through some of these yourself. And if so, please speak up and share your thoughts. Feel free to contribute. This is supposed to be conversational. I think we'll have some time at the end, hopefully, for some just open-ended questions and discussion. But speak up if you feel so inclined. And yeah, so again, I think hopefully, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of a lot of things today, but give you some of those tidbits to, hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a short list of sessions you can go back and dig into further. And that is pretty much it. Before we get in, I probably didn't really introduce myself, and I wanted Tucker and Kelly to introduce themselves as well. So my name is Jay Schoenwaelder. I am Marketing Operations Manager at MGIC, and I'm the co-leader of this Milwaukee mug, along with Kelly Trantow, who actually founded and started the mug. Was it like 3 years ago now? Kelly, I can let you introduce yourself.
Time is flying. Years ago, we started a mug. So thank you everyone for being here. My name is Kelly, and I'm an email strategist with Cisco Meraki. And we got a lot of content to go through. But before I start to dig into this, Tucker, I'm going to throw it over to you so you can introduce yourself, and then we'll dive in.
Sure, I'm Tucker Allen. I work at Carry Ingredients down in Beloit. It's an Irish-based company. I actually joined the Milwaukee user group before, when we were still talking to Coleman, when Marketo was not owned by Adobe, when we were just onboarding, and they invited me to the user group, made some great friends, awesome people. Like, because of Kelly, I got my Marketo certification. So really great relationships to build here. So yeah, thanks for inviting me, guys.
Thanks, Tucker.
Absolutely. Glad you could make it, Tucker. Always good to have you on. So Kelly, I think you have your own slides. Did you want to pull those up and steal the screen here?
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind, stop sharing, and then I can jump on in.
Yeah.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm going to be going over 2 sessions, and I really focus mine on lead nurturing. So the first session that we're going to recap is called Beyond the Batch and Blast, Building Customer Relationships Through Nurturing. And this one was presented by Janica. She works with Adobe. She has a ton of information on here. This is a 2-hour session, and I certainly am not going to do it justice. There's so much in here, but I would say this is a really great session if you want a good refresh on building actual nurturing engagement programs. She goes through building step by step, and she shows her Marketo instance, and she builds the programs, and we look at different statuses. She gives recommendations along the way. She goes through list creation, asset creation, lead scoring, transition rules, entry criteria, exit criteria, how to test, how to maintain, and how to report. So it's a ton of information, but it's a lot of information in 2 hours. So like I said, if you want a good refresher on how to do this, if you want to get some of those best practices, it is really boiled down, but I would say she does a really good job featuring everything to the book of how Marketo would say it's done best. And I say that because the next presentation that I'm going to highlight, they have some different recommendations that kind of go against, out of the box functionality of the engagement program. So without further ado, one of the things that I really liked about the presentation is that it went over types of nurturing campaigns. And of course, I like the namings of them. They're really unconventional, but I'm going to quickly run through these, and it kind of gets your gears going with how you can be doing different types of nurturing campaigns, or starting to think through how that compares to what you're currently doing or what you could be doing. So the first one is the red track. That was for net new audiences, top of funnel stuff, to introduce yourself, start the relationship, and then communicate what you can do, how you can help, services you provide, things like that. Next one was a Boomerang Track. That's for your recycled audience, so people that maybe aren't yet ready to buy, to remain top of mind. And so hopefully when they're ready to buy, you're right there. Then she had the Gopher Track, which is for people that have been in your database for a while. And the idea was You provide slow and steady content to regular pop up and stay in touch with them. The Gorilla Glue track, which is customer retention. So letting your customers know that you value their business and providing them really good content like VIP content, make it really personalized, service update, industry news. This is where your feedback surveys come into play. So that's your customer retention. Baby Comeback track, that's your win back track with the purpose of reconnecting with customers or prospects that maybe have been ignored for a little bit. You have your Sleeping Beauty track, that's your re-engagement, your wake up track. And the idea there was maybe they were once engaged but haven't been engaged for a while, and she recommended the threshold of 1 year. And then the last one that she went through was the detective track. And this is maybe for an audience that you don't know a ton about, or you're not quite sure where they fit in maybe some of your existing tracks. So the idea is you give them certain types of content so you can learn more about them and their interests, who they are, so you can then put them into a more relevant track. So this is just a high level types of nurturing campaigns that you could be considering. The other area I wanted to focus on was when to include nested programs within your streams. So with engagement programs, you have streams of content and people can move through the streams. You have transition rules, but there's different things that you can put in each stream. And a nested program is an example of one of them. So this is a screen capture of her screen as she was going through it and building the nested program. Here you can see there's a default program in stream 1, but a good use case of when to do that is if you want to send an email to a subgroup of people in the stream, or if you want to send a net new email to a subgroup within the stream. If you're going to be including other assets like landing pages, forms, things like that, you want them all bundled together within a program. You can also use it to enable multi-touch attribution, looking at the different program members. And then if you want to add additional flow steps, like sending an alert or sending an additional email, following the email cast itself within the nurture, that's a good time to use a nested program. So I thought it was just a good reminder of when to use them. And then going along the lines of nested programs, she had a really great recommendation, which I hadn't heard of. And it was to create a new channel specifically for nested programs. So over here on the right, I kind of gave, step by step of how to create a new channel. It's under admin, under channel, you go to tags, new, and then here you can create new channel. But her recommendation was to create a channel specifically for nurture nested email or nurture nested program. And it would be for the default program as well as the event program. So you'd be essentially creating two. With the analysis behavior of normal, and then your statuses would be member and engaged. And this allows you to track how they're engaging within sub-programs of your casts. So I thought it was a really interesting approach, and I thought it was a good best practice. So that concludes my recap of a 2-hour session. Like I said, I really didn't go into a lot of detail on it. Because I wanted to focus a little bit more on this session. This is called Don't Be a Basic Batch 2. It's presented by Jen and Jessica, and they actually did Don't Be a Basic Batch 1 in 2020. So that recording's still available, and that one kind of sets up the content for this one. But I really like the approach of this, and I think it's really something that we can all apply when starting to talk to internal stakeholders about nurturing. So overall, this is a 30-minute, it's really easy to consume. A lot of the information you're going to get here today, but they also have good commentary, tips, and tricks along the way that I'm not able to cover. But it gives you the framework of having this conversation, and they use this analogy of a bus. So this is the Nurture Express, and it kind of goes through these different steps of, how do you get on the bus? And this is talking about your target audience and where does the bus stop? And that's, what are the different content pieces that you want them to engage with? And when do you switch buses? And that's talking about like maybe different streams or different nurturing campaigns. Like when do they need to switch the journey that they're on? Where is your bus going? That's looking at your primary objective. What are we trying to get them to do? And then the last one is, how do we get off the bus? What's the exit criteria for your nurture? And overall, what I appreciated was, yes, these are the steps that you need to be thinking through. Absolutely, they go in this order, but they really did a nice job of saying, this is how you ask these questions for internal stakeholders. And then this is how you think about it when you have your MOPS hat on and you're thinking through like implementation and being able to actually separate those conversations. So you want to start with
I really like that slide. I could envision like using that internally just to kind of sell the idea of why you should use engagement programs, because that's something that not, you know, for a lot of people who are maybe in marketing but like not in Marketo, it's like hard to kind of, I don't know, kind of grasp sometimes. This is great. I also like that kind of menu of types of nurtures. I really like that too. I think like those two things together could go really well for you if you're trying to pitch this internally.
It's so funny to say that because I actually used the Nurture Express bus analogy in a meeting this morning.
Nice.
Because same thing, I was talking to internal stakeholders and, you know, in your mind you have like, you know, do we have the right data and do we have enough content and like, how does that align to our funnel and what we're trying to say and what we're trying to get them to do? And it's like, this is all the things that I'm worrying about, but this isn't the conversation we need to be having. So this gives you a nice roadmap to have those conversations. So starting with the audience, you always want to start with the audience, and many times people want to start with like the content or what we're trying to get them to do or pipeline. But this will help you figure out, is the juice worth the squeeze? Meaning, are you building a nurture for maybe an audience that you don't have the right data for, or maybe you only have 100 people? So always starting with the audience. And I actually stole a lot of their slides verbatim. So I added some color commentary here at the bottom. But this is a good example of, you know, here we're talking about the target audience. And on the left with key decisions, these are the conversations you're having internally. And then on the right with implementation, this is how you're thinking about it with, how am I going to do this in Marketo? How am I going to build this? How am I going to get the data? What about my segmentation? But when you're talking to stakeholders, it's, you know, how are we going to identify these people, or who's going to be getting this content? You know, it's a different way of positioning it. And one of the things that really stuck with me is separating those conversations. So what are we trying to do versus how are we going to get it done? And making sure you keep a nice divide between those. And then once you have the key decisions, that's when you can start to think about how you're going to get it done. So then from there, you move on to your second step, which is content. And we're looking at, I mean, these bullet points under key decisions pretty much build the map for how you get there. So what content do you have? What's your inventory? And then how does it align to the funnel? And then do you have any gaps? Do you have to create any content? And then how does that map out the journey? So many times people are starting with the journey. Here's what I want them to do. Let's go back in and plug in some stuff. But it's more efficient if you start with, what do we have? What's appropriate to send? What's the cadence that's appropriate? And then where are gaps? Like, what could we be creating? So you're not creating a ton of stuff that maybe you don't need. And they gave a great example of a webinar. And sometimes it's just nice to be reminded that something like a webinar can be cut down into 2 to 3 minutes just to bubble up. Here's the main key points from this 60-minute webinar. You can also create an infographic from it or a one-pager. So it's taking one piece of content and using it multiple ways. And another nice reminder is not all content needs to be ready when you start the nurture. So like with your casts, and as you add emails or programs to that stream, not everything needs to be ready when you go to turn that on. So it's a nice reminder that you can build out a timeline to accommodate it. And then this is the last step of the 5 that I kind of focused on, which is the personalized nurture paths. This is, you know, when do you switch bus lines? And I like the way that they position this because it's more about how you have that conversation internally. So you should be asking questions to understand when we want someone to transition. So the example they gave was, you know, awareness, consideration to decision. Maybe that's top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel. And in our minds, you know, as people that are working in the platform, we're thinking through, you know, do they go through all the content even if they don't engage? Do we just keep like letting them run through it? When are we going to switch them to the next one? What are those thresholds? Do we only transition them if they get to a threshold? But the way that we would have that conversation with a stakeholder might be, if someone received all the awareness emails and they don't engage with anything, do we want them to get the consideration emails next? like the way that we use it without jargon to have that conversation is different and applies. So with this transitioning of different experiences, different nurturing paths, there were some really good tips and takeaways that they focused on. And this is where I was saying it's a little bit different from, I would say, how Marketo is going to position, this is how you use engagement programs. So this is some recommendations that I hadn't really thought of or heard of. And I really liked them. And ultimately, it's going to depend on your business and what you're doing and how you want to run your nurture program. But the recommendations that they gave were transition between nurture programs versus having it all in streams. And the reason they recommended that is because it allows you to trigger based on member of program. You can also monitor the members of those programs a little bit more tightly if you want to have more control. They were saying you should build individual nurture programs and then have someone move from program to program, like actual nurture programs, instead of having them move from stream to stream inside one program. And then they recommended using smart campaigns instead of transition rules to do that. And once again, it's about the control. So they called it a global traffic controller. But basically, it's a smart campaign that controls the logic of who goes into what nurture. Once again, it allows you to see, at each person level, who's going where to help you troubleshoot or scale as needed. So I thought it was a really interesting approach. So I added that here as tips and tricks. And last but not least, there's a ton of nurture content out there. This here is a picture of the Don't Be a Basic Batch 1 from last year. That content is available on demand if you want to go watch it. There's also a really great ebook and cheat sheet from Marketo specifically on lead nurturing. So there's plenty of resources out there if you want to continue going down that path. So that concludes all things lead nurturing.
Wow. Thank you for that, Kelly. I mean, personally, we have to take a deep look internally at my company on how we're doing lead nurtures, because our strategy is very, I would say, young when it comes to lead nurturing.
You're not alone, Tucker. You're not
alone. Which page am
alone.
I sharing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm definitely gonna kind of go back and watch that one too, because the idea of transitioning between the engagement programs instead of using streams, I think there are probably pros and cons to that, just like anything else.
For sure.
Are you seeing my PowerPoint? Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom sharing.
Yeah, Tucker.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No, Kelly.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've.
That was.
Sorry, Tucker. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think that was fantastic. Again, we're still pretty new. I think we have we're a global company, Carrie is, and we have one team that's really started picking up nurturing, and I really need that slide where you're talking about the different types of nurtures. Right now, it's more of just a drip. It's just a hand, like raise your hand. I forget what it was called, but yeah, I definitely want to take that back and look at it internally. So my approach is going to be a little bit different than Kelly's. I'm more going to focus on the last week's May release notes that came out that I'm really excited about. Summit for me this year couldn't have been more relevant because Carrie, right now, we're in the process of transitioning our CMS over to AEM. So I'm the marketing ops guy. I work very closely with Marketo in everyday work, and we're transitioning from, currently we're on Sitecore, we're moving over to AEM by Q3. We just did our full discovery project with a group, and we're just now starting that migration phase. And I mean, that's coming up so quickly. So we have everything built in Marketo. Our lead assignment processes even are through Marketo. All our forms are Marketo. It's going to be a huge job. But just like what Michael spoke to earlier when he was on the call, he talked about how a big theme of the Adobe Summit this year was just Adobe bringing all of those capabilities under the same hood. So I'm not sure if anybody else is going through the same thing right now, but if you are in the process of transitioning to AEM, reach out to me. We can, spitball ideas because it's going to be a big project. But for me, my presentation is going to be a little bit different. I was going to more focus on some new capabilities that I'm really interested in using that are just released actually as of this month. The first one of those is Account Smart Lists. So this is for people that already have a target account management. And I apologize to the Adobe team. I straight stole these first 3 slides from the team, and I'm going to speak to them very, very briefly. So please don't get me for copyright. But these are really
You
cool.
gave proper credit.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great presentation. I really appreciated it. But at first, when I went to look at these and I pulled them up in my instance, I was like, oh, cool, this is a really neat new feature. How is it any different than a smart list? And it took me a little bit of playing around with it, and I'll show you guys that here in a minute. But what I'm excited about, especially with us moving to AEM, is just the way you can use this. If you have account profile, you can start to pull this into your account smart list. You can also pull in individual activities for people that live under those accounts. And then if you're missing buying circles, you can start to find those missing kind of profiles that you need to fill. And then once you have your smart list, you can activate it in any sort of flow step. You can add it to an ad network. You can do all kinds of things. So without beating on this one too far, I will move on. I'm actually going to skip this one too. And I might just go ahead and jump into my use case for this. So here's an example. I'm just going to give you the high level goals, and then I'm going to jump into my instance. So a goal of ours was we have a field that's called account class. And we were noticing some of our strategic accounts just weren't interacting with content. They weren't filling out forms. And we weren't sure how to find that out. We couldn't see, we can see people are visiting, high level view, but we can't see what they're doing. So our goal here is to find these people and then do something with them. So send them a call to action email, or in the future case, we want to send them to AEM and present to them a personalized experience. So many use cases for this, and I'll jump into the use case here. So my goal is to find strategic growth account classes in the United States where 2 people from that exact same account have visited any page in the past 90 days, and they maybe just haven't filled out a form. So that's kind of my target right there. And here's my instance of Marketo. So please don't mind my organizational structure here, but this is the target account smart list. These can only be built in marketing activities under programs. So if you're going to database, you're not going to find it. You have to build them inside of a program. And here's my test example. I've just said I want the country to be United States, and I want an account class of strategic growth. So that's the group I'm going for. Now here's where it really gets different from a smart list. You can match at least you can name amount of people that have done an activity. So what I'm saying here is I want at least 2 people under this account that have visited any page in the past 90 days. And then I also want it within this account, nobody's filled out a form. So you can imagine you can really tweak this in any way that you want. If you have opportunities or standard products that you're selling, you could easily build a cross-sell or an upsell type of list. And then you can do all kinds of things with this. So you can go up here to account smart list actions. I can send this directly to an ad network. Once we have AEM set up, I could send this directly to a static list and then send that straight to AEM for a personalization list. And then we can present to them better content focused on different types of cross-sell products, that sort of thing.
So Tucker, I have a quick question.
Yes.
As far as like sending to the ad network, do you have pre-integrated ad network set up on your instance?
We do.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we could send this to LinkedIn to build a lookalike list, or we actually just got our Facebook and Instagram set up to do that. So we're doing Instagram forms that connect straight to Facebook, and then connect those to webinars where people are signing up on Facebook or Instagram, getting all the alerts and automation built in directly. And here's how you can kind of see it in a smart campaign. So all I'm doing is I have this little test smart campaign. I'm just saying if they're a people member of an account smart list, and here's my smart list, and you can do any sort of flow actions on here. So you can add them to an engagement program. If you wanted to add them to a named account so you can measure them in the ABM tool, you can do that, or you can just send them an email. So all kinds of things you can do here. It's pretty incredible. Now, Kelly, I'm not going to take nearly as much time here. I'm going to be very quick. I have two other things really quickly. These are things that I think are amazing that Adobe has finally done. This is an actual form submission that somebody submitted on our website, and it was a bot. They say, "Hi there, this is Melanie." I was surprised, to put it nicely, when I saw my images on your website, and then they have this link that goes to potentially a hazardous link where they're going to hack our computers. And so these alerts are actually going out. Like somehow they meet all our criteria. They had a real email. They marked all the right boxes, and this went out to an account manager. And I'm going, I got to stop this. I've tried. They tweak the message all these different ways. I've tried saying if comment has X words, get rid of it. But it still gets through. So something new that Adobe did was they allowed a feature for rejecting invalid checksum values. So basically they have a list. I don't know exactly how they've done this, but it prevents these bots from coming through. I haven't tested it, but I think it's preventing these. I haven't seen any of these since I activated it. So that's really exciting for me and for anybody else.
Tucker, I don't know if you saw Jonathan's comment just now, but he gets 2 messages from Mel a week, he said.
Does he?
It's wild, like the same exact one, and it's also always some variation of Melanie, right? Or Mel or Melissa, something like that. And I'm
Mel's the worst.
I'm just north of you here in Janesville at Data Dimensions. That's funny.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll show you where you can go in and turn that on real quick.
That would be awesome, because I've been dying for something like that, because Mel's really making me angry.
No,
dang it, Mel.
Real quick before I jump back into Marketo, there's also a new preventing bot engagement activity. So essentially, if you notice, and I've seen this in the forums all the time, where they talk about bots, triggering open or click activity. If you have flow steps that are, on the backs of clicks and they're being triggered by these bot activities, we can now turn that off. I'm not sure if anybody does that. We have our scoring built on opens and clicks, and this is just, it's terrible. So Adobe fixed that, yay. They turned it off so it doesn't happen anymore.
Have you seen an impact to your email performance reports?
Well, I'll show you right now. I'll show you real quick. So I turned this on May 13th. This is where you find it, by the way. You go into admin and then under email. This is the email bot. And I turned it on May 13th, and we've already blocked 158 opens and clicks. So honestly, I'm not sure how many emails we've sent in that time frame. It's probably not been a ton, but hey, at least we're blocking those, which is great. And then the last,
I enabled it in our instance after I talked to you last week, Tucker, and I haven't seen much of a difference in the email reports, but I have not checked this number of opens and clicks filtered, so I'll have to go check that.
Well, we just had regional teams meetings for digital marketing, and I told them, be aware that you might see a downtick in your email performance, but if you do, it's good, because we're now not measuring those bot clicks or opens.
Yep.
So I actually ran into this week. I have a campaign that's triggering an email based off of someone clicking in another email. And the red flag came up when my triggered email had a 96% open rate and a 95% click-through rate.
Holy cow.
So I was like, too good to be true, what's happening? So I pulled a smart list. So the trigger went to about 3,000 people. I pulled the smart list to say how many people clicked and made it to the web page that it drove them to. And it was about 200. So I anticipate that we need to turn this bad boy on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Jonathan, this is the last one right here. If you go down to treasure chest, you can see at the bottom here, it's the last one. So reject invalid checksum values. And this is the one when you enable it, it should prevent those bots. Hopefully no more mails are going to get through. I've also rejected the invalid form one. I think this one's older, but I didn't have it enabled, so I went ahead and turned that one on. So yeah, that is pretty much it. I know you were asking about, are we using ad network? And here's an example of where we actually use it with one of our campaigns. I'll kind of scroll in. And this was for a previous presentation. It just so happened to be here. But essentially, you can see this is my screenshot from my own Instagram where we sent this to an ad network. This is a Instagram form where a video popped up, automatically played, and it said sign up. You can sign up here, automatically set you up. You're already signed into the webinar. And then I got all the thank you emails and all that. So just kind of an extra bonus right there.
Tucker, how are those performing?
This one just started and it's with our Irish team. I don't know. I want to say it's doing well, but I don't know.
Does that kind of campaign cause data issues for you? Like where people would, maybe use their personal email address versus their business email address?
Oh, well, this is one of our smaller consumer facing brands. So it's really
okay, sure.
on, the use case that kind of campaign, we're happy with it being their personal email. So we
didn't realize it was consumer facing. That makes sense. Yeah.
If you look up CarryMate, it's just in Europe, and I think the direct competitors with like Kerrygold, the butter, if you know who they are.
So, yeah, I do. Got some.
And they actually have some amazing vegan cheese. You can't really see the photo here. I wonder if I can blow it up. You can kind of see it, but that's vegan cheese. And it's supposed to melt just like normal cheese and stick together just like your normal cheese. Yeah.
Tucker, no selling or pitching of any kind in these mugs.
You can't even buy it in the US. I've been trying to get it forever. Oh, let me stop sharing. If I can figure that out. There we go. Sorry, I'm not a Zoom expert. Cool. We use Teams.
So before we move on, I'm curious, has anyone here also enabled the form bot or email bot in their instance?
Yeah, I haven't enabled it yet just because I want to double check with our leadership because they always report on our like click rate, and I'm really concerned that all of a sudden like next month it's going to be like our emails suck. So I just have to give them the warning, but it was one of the things I was really excited about in this release.
Sometimes rip the Band-Aid off.
I haven't done anything yet either, obviously, but Tucker, you just made my day with just those 2 points there, because I've actually told my boss and to relay to management that our email clicks and stuff are basically useless and take them with a grain of salt, because across the board, you can tell which ones are fake because they click on every single link in the email. And so I'm like, take these with a grain of salt, and it's been hard to kind of really establish a value with those because of that. So I'm really excited to put that in and see how it affects things.
Nice.
I appreciate some of the tips that are on here. I want to ask you actually about the the bot traffic in terms of form spam and also kind of combined with the ad networks that you're showing here too. Does that apply to like the lead gen forms that you see from LinkedIn and Facebook as well? Do you know if that curbs spam?
I have no idea. I think it's just Marketo forms, to be honest, because the LinkedIn and Facebook forms, those are through API. I think you would need to have them integrate a similar type of product in order to prevent bot integration or bot form completions.
Okay. Hey, one last thing too, then, did you ever do kind of the Recaptcha solution before this was available? And if so, are you going to retire that now, or do you think you do both?
We don't use the Recaptcha right now. We did way back in the day when we were on a different platform, not Marketo, and it's so cheesy. I can't stand using those. I mean, they are better to prevent bots, but
yeah, not a good user experience, right? It's like it's better for us internally, but not for the person filling out the form.
Okay. Now we're looking at Recaptcha 3 recently, and Sandy has some code on it, but there's almost no documentation on it yet, probably because it's new. And I'm glad they're doing this, because then you don't have to worry if there's changes that Google makes to that code. Then you have to go back and kind of go, is this right? Is this going to work now with it? So good on them for actually having that implemented now.
Yeah, for sure. Good points. Good. Well, hey, thanks a lot, Tucker. Really good takeaways there. Good highlights. In the interest of time, I'm noticing we only have about 8 minutes left. I'm going to kind of breeze through my sessions. I had 3 that I wanted to highlight, and I focused, I guess, probably more on the operational side of things. You know, working with different stakeholders within your organization, and kind of setting up the team to succeed, right? So the first one I'll call out is something that I've always thought is really important, and is this session around engaging sales in all of your marketing efforts. Chelsea Kiko and Natalie Kremer, or is it Kramer? I probably mispronounced that. Sorry, Natalie. Did a really good job here. And for those, you know, in the Milwaukee area, you might remember Natalie actually was a guest feature or a guest speaker on our September mug, I believe, where she talked about tokens. So it was kind of good to see her on the big virtual stage at Summit. But yeah, you know, both Chelsea and Natalie are all over the place in the Marketo community, two really frequent contributors. So if you spent any time in the community, you've definitely seen some of their content. But they did a really good job talking about this topic that is frankly kind of covered a lot, but it's really important because really, as marketing, you know, people, marketing automation, marketing operations, whatever you kind of consider yourself, all of the work that we're doing, it really depends on that relationship with sales, because just like we need them, they need us, and that needs to be kind of a two-way relationship. And you know, I think the way that Natalie and Chelsea kind of structured their presentation was a really good framework for somebody who, you know, maybe in your own organization, you're recognizing like, man, we need to really start getting on the same page with sales. They really break it down in a way that I think is like really methodical. Like, okay, we need to focus on this, you know, as far as what are the process for getting MQLs or alerts to sales, and do we agree with sales on what an MQL is? They covered some of the common tools that somebody using Marketo might use, you know, specifically with Salesforce and Marketo Sales Insight, and how they're using those, how they're assigning tasks with really like specific information about why a salesperson's receiving this task. I think that's really important. Then they talked a lot about kind of creating those SLAs, those service level agreements with sales, and really focusing on the training and retraining, and kind of holding each other accountable. And, you know, kind of like I mentioned, a nice framework. This is actually a slide that I kind of made note of and kept for something, or for my own keeping. Because I think, you know, it's just a really nice summary of things to consider to keep that relationship with your sales team strong. And I won't go through point by point, but, you know, I think it really comes down to staying close with sales, and really, like, as a marketing team, kind of, you know, what we're trying to do in Marketo, and what a lot of us are trying to do, prove the impact that you're making to the business. How are you helping sales? Because the more we can measure that quantifiably, is that a word? Yeah. The easier it will be to kind of, you know, back up some of the initiatives that you might be pushing on the sales. Because sometimes, you know, it's like, hey, this is extra work for me. If I'm a sales rep, I don't really see the benefit. If you can prove that benefit, that's going to help your cause. Moving on. Next thing I wanted to highlight was another session from Brooke and Christina. They always put out really good content. And this kind of grabbed my attention. For those in the Milwaukee area, I actually did a local session on this back when we were in person, on centralized versus decentralized. And at that time, I was at more of a centralized, I was on more of a centralized team. And since then I've moved jobs, and so I've kind of had my foot in both areas, and so it was interesting to kind of see how Brooke and Christina broke this down. And similar to the last presentation I covered, I think that they did a really good job, really kind of structuring the thought process of what's better for me, centralized structure versus a decentralized structure. And if you're not familiar with that concept, I mean, most of us probably are, but like, it's really just about the way that your team or the marketing team gets work done. Is there a central team that does a lot of the execution for all these, different stakeholders, or is the actual execution done by a bunch of different marketing individuals throughout the organization? And there are pros and cons to both, but really they kind of broke it down in terms of governance. Like, what do you kind of have to consider there? Obviously with centralized, it's a little bit more controlled data. And with decentralized, you're giving permission and access to a lot of people who, they might not be using Marketo or some of these tools every day, and they might be prone to errors there. They talked about the need for training, centralized versus decentralized. Centralized, focused training on a smaller group of people, pretty clear need there. Whereas decentralized, you're usually dealing with a lot of different people who don't use these tools frequently, a lot of turnover, so a lot of training investment there. They also talked about job satisfaction and some of the considerations for that, which I thought was really interesting. And then cost as well. And a lot of that has to do with the need for training versus if you're centralized, you might be running short on team members or time. You might need to reach out and get more consultant help or something like that. So really, what's the best? I think it depends, like anything. Usually most people, I think, find themselves somewhere in the middle. I think, and I think that's just kind of the nature of things. But really, if this is something that interests you, I think that they did a really good job kind of breaking this down and structuring that conversation. So lastly, and this is something that caught my eye. Actually, Tucker turned me on to it. We have, since this is the Milwaukee, kind of Wisconsin group, it would be remiss if I didn't mention that Ben Conrad from the Milwaukee Bucks had a session about personalization. And it was, aside from the fact that, okay, Milwaukee Bucks, I got to cover it, we're in Milwaukee, it was a really good presentation. And I think a lot of times, at least for me, in my opinion, these sessions on personalization can be kind of pie in the sky, like, using a lot of buzzwords like omni-channel, be in the right place at the right time. And it's all like true and, obviously where we all want to get to. But I really thought specifically Ben did a really nice job of like kind of telling the story of how the Bucks began using personalization and how it's evolved. And for me, when people can kind of tell a story like that, it becomes a little bit less overwhelming. Like, start small, incrementally improve, and eventually, you just kind of keep growing. And it was really interesting to see how they kind of evolved, where they started and where they are now. So definitely recommend checking that out. But yeah, that covers the sessions, and we are just at time. I'll stop there. And Kelly, did you want to give any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us over your lunch hour. I hope you found some nuggets that you can take away and use right away. If you find that you're using any of this information and you want to share how that's going, please do. Find us on LinkedIn, find us on the community. I would love to hear how you're putting this into action, and we can continue to grow with each other. So happy Thursday, and thank you for joining us. Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jonathan. Great job, Tucker and Kelly.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.